In the biting chill of a late autumn evening, the city's streets seemed colder than usual, the sharp wind cutting through layers of fabric like icy blades. Mia Johnson pulled her tattered coat tighter around her swollen belly, each breath visible in the frosty air. She moved cautiously down the cracked pavement, her worn boots crunching against scattered leaves and discarded trash. The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced eerily along the graffiti-stained walls. Around her, the city was alive with distant sounds. The hum of traffic, the occasional shout, the low murmur of late-night conversations. But none of it reached her as comfort. Instead, it was a harsh reminder of how alone she truly was. Mia's eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of shelter, any place that might offer reprieve from the biting cold and the unforgiving night. With each step, the weight of her predicament pressed heavier upon her. She was 8 months pregnant, alone, and without a home. Circumstances she had never imagined would define her life. The apartment she once rented had been claimed by the landlord after months of missed payments. Friends had drifted away, unable or unwilling to offer help. Her phone had long since lost its charge, and the small purse slung over her shoulder contained little beyond a few crumpled bills and a faded photograph of a smiling woman she barely recognized anymore. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The city, sprawling and indifferent, offered no kindness to those who fell through its cracks. Mia knew it well. She had spent nights in shelters, on park benches, in doorways just sheltered enough to keep the wind at bay. But tonight felt different. The cold was sharper, the streets emptier, and the ache in her body more persistent. Her footsteps slowed as she approached a dimly lit bus stop, the bench coated in a thin sheen of frost. She hesitated, debating whether to rest or keep moving. The thought of sitting down and not being able to get up quickly filled her with dread. Still, exhaustion tugged at her limbs mercilessly. As she lowered herself onto the bench, Mia's mind drifted to the past few months. The loss of her job, the breakdown of her relationship, the mounting bills, and the growing belly that seemed to weigh her down in more ways than one. She clenched her fists, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. The city around her pulsed with life and opportunity, yet she felt invisible, a shadow slipping between cracks in the pavement. The cold gnawed at her bones, but it was the loneliness that burned deepest. A sudden gust of wind blew a scrap of paper across the street, catching Mia's attention. She watched it flutter, trapped briefly against a street sign before lifting again and disappearing down an alleyway. Curiosity stirred faintly within her, a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Standing slowly, she followed the paper's path, her steps tentative but determined. The alley was narrow and dim, lined with overflowing trash bins and walls smeared with faded posters. At the far end, the paper had settled on the cracked pavement in front of a dilapidated building with a flickering neon sign that read, "Vacancy." Mia's heart skipped. The building looked abandoned, its windows boarded up and paint peeling. But the sign promised something. A roof, a refuge from the cold. Tentatively, she pushed open the heavy door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was stale but dry, and the faint scent of old wood and dust replaced the biting wind outside. The lobby was empty, its faded wallpaper curling at the edges, and a broken chandelier dangled precariously from the ceiling. Dust motes floated in the weak light, filtering through grimy windows. She moved further inside, her footsteps echoing softly. The motel felt frozen in time, a relic of better days now left to decay. Yet, within its peeling walls, Mia sensed potential, a chance to carve out a space where she might survive, if only for a little while longer. She found a set of keys hanging behind the front desk, labeled with room numbers, and carefully selected one at random. The key was cold and heavy in her hand, a tangible link to a place that could offer shelter, if only she dared to claim it. Pushing open the door to room 7, Mia stepped inside. The air was musty, but the bed was intact, covered with a thin, threadbare blanket. A cracked mirror hung crookedly on the wall, and a small window revealed the dark street beyond. She sank onto the bed, the springs creaking beneath her weight, and allowed herself a moment to breathe. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of safety, a fragile bubble against the harshness of the outside world. As she settled in, Mia's thoughts wandered to the life growing inside her, a tiny heartbeat pulsing with promise and vulnerability. The city might have cast her aside, but this broken motel, with its peeling wallpaper and faded signage, offered her a chance to gather strength before the storm. She knew the nights ahead would be long and uncertain. But for now, the cold had retreated, replaced by a tentative warmth that began in the shelter of these 4 cracked walls. Outside, the wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city that never truly sleeps. Inside, Mia closed her eyes, clutching her belly and whispering a silent vow. To protect, to endure, and to find hope even in the darkest corners of the city. The night deepened around the old motel, its creaking walls settling into an uneasy silence that seemed to hold its breath. Mia Johnson sat on the edge of the worn bed, her hands resting gently on her rounded belly, feeling the quiet flutter of life within. Outside, the city's distant hum softened, replaced by the occasional drip of water from a leaky gutter and the rustle of wind slipping through broken window panes. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the grime-coated window. It was far from comfortable, but it was shelter. And for now, that was enough. Mia rose slowly, moving toward the small bathroom tucked into the corner of the room. The door protested with a creak as she pushed it open, revealing a cracked sink and a grimy mirror clouded with age. She turned the rusty faucet, and a sputter of cold water emerged, enough to splash on her face and wash away some of the fatigue etched into her skin. The chill bit at her fingers, reminding her how vulnerable she was in this place. But she refused to let despair take hold. Back in the main room, Mia surveyed her surroundings with a growing sense of cautious optimism. The furniture was sparse and battered. A sagging mattress, a rickety chair with frayed upholstery, and a small bedside table scarred by years of neglect. Pinned to the wall above the bed was a faded calendar from several years prior, its dates long past. But it hinted at a time when this place had been alive with guests and purpose. The thought stirred something inside her. A quiet question. Could this motel, abandoned and overlooked, be a starting point instead of an end? She moved slowly, careful not to disturb the thin blanket that barely covered the mattress. Settling down again, Mia pulled a threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders, the fabric rough but offering some comfort against the chill that had settled deep in the room's bones. Her thoughts drifted to the nights spent outdoors before finding this sanctuary. The biting cold, the hard concrete beneath her, the fear that had wrapped itself around her heart like a shroud. The motel's worn walls felt like a shield, fragile but real. A sudden noise startled her, a faint scuffling sound coming from the hallway beyond the door. Mia's breath caught, her body tensing as she listened. The sound was subtle but distinct. Footsteps, slow and uneven, as if someone else was moving through the building. Her heart pounded in her chest. After weeks of solitude, the presence of another soul was at once terrifying and strangely reassuring. She rose cautiously, her bare feet brushing against the threadbare rug as she crept toward the door. Peering through the cracked window beside it, she saw a shadowy figure moving down the corridor, their footsteps echoing softly against the faded wallpaper. The figure paused near the stairwell, then moved on, disappearing into the darkness. Mia closed the door gently, her hands trembling slightly as she leaned against it. The motel was not as empty as she had thought. Returning to the bed, she sank back down and wrapped her shawl tighter. The presence of another person awakened a mixture of hope and wariness. Who else could be seeking refuge in this forgotten place? Was the motel a secret haven for others like her, lost and searching? The thought was both comforting and unsettling. As dawn approached, the weak light of early morning filtered through the grimy window, casting a pale glow across the room. Mia stirred, her body aching but her spirit stirred by a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't remain passive in this place. She needed to make it her own, to find some measure of control in a life that had spiraled beyond it. With careful hands, Mia began to tidy the room as best she could. She gathered the scattered debris, a broken lamp, a torn curtain, and set them aside. She opened the small closet, discovering a few neglected hangers and a shelf coated in dust. Among the debris, she found a battered suitcase wedged behind a loose panel. Its leather was cracked and worn, but inside, she uncovered a handful of forgotten belongings. A faded photograph, a pair of worn gloves, and a small, leather-bound journal. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the journal, its cover embossed with a delicate floral pattern faded by time. Opening it to the first page, she found neat handwriting, entries dated years ago, written by someone who had once called this place home. The words spoke of hardship and hope, of nights spent counting stars and days filled with quiet acts of kindness. The journal revealed a story of resilience, of a woman who had used the motel as a refuge during her darkest hours. Mia felt a connection stirred deep within her, as if the journal's author was reaching across time to offer her strength. She read on, absorbing the tales of struggle and survival, of small victories that had carried the writer through. The motel was more than a forgotten building. It was a witness to countless lives, a silent guardian for those who had nowhere else to turn. Encouraged, Mia decided to explore further. She unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, her footsteps tentative on the cracked linoleum floor. The walls were adorned with faded wallpaper, peeling at the corners, and the air carried a faint scent of mildew and memories. She moved carefully down the corridor, passing closed doors numbered in peeling paint, each one a threshold to a forgotten story. At the end of the hall, a narrow staircase spiraled upward, its wooden steps worn and creaking with age. Mia hesitated, the weight of her pregnancy making the climb daunting, but curiosity compelled her forward. Ascending carefully, she reached the second floor, where the hallway was darker and colder. The windows here were cracked, letting in slivers of cold air that whispered through the space. She paused outside a door left slightly ajar, peering inside. The room was empty, save for a single chair and a small table, both coated in dust. On the table lay a faded brochure for the motel, boasting amenities that no longer existed. "A place to call home," it read in bold letters. The irony was not lost on Mia, yet beneath the layers of neglect, she sensed the motel's heart still beat faintly, waiting to be revived. Returning downstairs, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. This place, with all its flaws and decay, offered something she had not felt in a long time. a chance. Tomorrow, she would begin to make it her own, to breathe life back into these hollow halls. For now, she settled once more on the bed, the journal resting on her lap, its pages a promise of endurance and hope. As the first rays of sunlight spilled through the window, casting long shadows across the room, Mia closed her eyes and allowed herself to imagine a future where this abandoned motel became more than just a shelter. It became a home. The morning light seeped through the grimy window panes of room 7, casting pale beams across the cracked floorboards and threadbare furnishings. Mia Johnson sat by the window, her fingers tracing the worn edges of the leather-bound journal she had discovered the night before. The neat handwriting on its yellowed pages told stories of resilience and quiet hope. And with each word, Mia felt a growing bond to the place that sheltered her. The motel's faded past whispered through those pages, and she wondered about the lives that had passed through these halls before her. She rose carefully, the weight of her pregnancy reminding her to move with measured grace. The small room, though threadbare and neglected, now held a strange kind of promise. She crossed to the window and peered out at the street below, where the city stirred to life amid the usual cacophony of early morning sounds. Distant sirens, the rumble of a garbage truck, and the murmur of waking voices. It was a world that felt both distant and daunting. But the motel offered a fragile refuge from its relentless pace. Determined to make the space her own, Mia began to explore the room more thoroughly. The bed, though sagging and worn, was the central anchor. She smoothed the blanket as best she could, folding back the edges and straightening the thin pillow. The chair in the corner, its fabric torn and stained, was pushed closer to the small desk, where she found a cracked lamp with a bulb that still flickered to life when switched on. It was a small victory, this flicker of light in the dim room, a sign that life still lingered here. Her gaze fell on the cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. She approached it slowly and caught her own reflection, tired eyes framed by strands of chestnut hair, a face marked by hardship but not defeated. She touched her cheek, feeling the warmth beneath her fingertips, and allowed herself a faint, tentative smile. This reflection was the woman who had survived so far, who would survive whatever came next. Mia's attention turned to the closet, its door hanging slightly ajar. Inside, the space was sparse, a few broken hangers dangling from the rod, and a shelf thick with dust. She found a forgotten box tucked away in the duck's corner and opened it with gentle fingers. Inside were assorted remnants: a faded scarf, a cracked pocket mirror, and a bundle of letters tied with a fraying ribbon. The letters, yellowed with age, were addressed to someone named Eleanor, a name that Mia recognized from the journal's entries. Sitting back on the bed, Mia carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the top letter. The handwriting was elegant and flowing, filled with words of longing and hope, of struggles to rebuild a life shattered by loss. Eleanor's voice echoed through the years, a testament to the motel's role as a sanctuary for those in need. Mia felt a kinship with this woman she had never met, connected by shared hardships and the fragile thread of hope that wove through their stories. As the morning wore on, Mia explored the room further, opening drawers and peering beneath furniture. She discovered a small collection of items left behind: a worn-out notebook, a cracked coffee cup, and a faded photograph tucked into a book's pages. The photograph showed a group of smiling faces gathered in front of the motel, their expressions warm and genuine. Among them was a woman who resembled the journal's author, her eyes bright with determination. The room was more than a shelter. It was a vessel of memories, a silent witness to lives intertwined with the motel's fading walls. Mia felt a growing responsibility to honor those stories, to breathe new life into this forgotten place. She resolved to keep the journal and letters close, their words a source of strength for the uncertain days ahead. Despite the motel's decay, Mia began to imagine small improvements. She pictured washing the grimy windows to let in more light, patching the peeling wallpaper, and finding sturdy blankets to replace the threadbare ones. The thought of creating warmth and safety here stirred a flicker of hope that had been dormant for too long. Her reverie was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Mia's heart quickened as she rose cautiously, unsure who might be calling at this hour. She opened the door a crack and found herself face to face with a man in his early 30s, his worn jacket dusted with the city's grime. His eyes held a mixture of concern and kindness. "Sorry to bother you," he said quietly. "I'm Daniel. I work for the outreach program downtown. We've been trying to find this place, heard it might still be standing, and I wanted to see if anyone was here. Are you okay?" Mia hesitated, the instinct to protect herself warring with a deep-seated need for connection. After a moment, she stepped aside and motioned for him to enter. The room felt even smaller with another person inside, but Daniel's presence was a balm to her isolation. He looked around with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "This place has been empty for a while," he said softly, "but it means a lot to people. It used to be a refuge for folks like you, people down on their luck, trying to get back on their feet." Mia nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I found a journal and some letters," she admitted, "stories from the people who stayed here before. It's like they left pieces of themselves behind." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's the spirit of the place. It's more than just a building. It's history, hope, and sometimes a second chance." They talked quietly, Daniel sharing information about local resources and offering support, while Mia listened, cautiously hopeful. His presence was a reminder that she was not entirely alone, that even in the city's vast indifference, there were people willing to reach out. As the morning shadows lengthened, Mia felt a fragile sense of belonging take root. The motel, with its faded walls and whispered stories, was no longer just a shelter from the cold. It was becoming a place where she might rebuild, piece by piece, the life she had lost. Daniel left with a promise to return, and Mia closed the door behind him, her heart lighter, but her resolve firmer. Sitting back on the bed, she opened the journal once more, tracing the words that had first drawn her here. The motel's past had found her, and now perhaps she could write its future. As the afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards of room 7, Mia settled onto the bed with the leather-bound journal resting heavily in her lap. The pages, yellowed and fragile, beckoned with promises of forgotten stories and hidden truths. She opened it carefully, mindful of the delicate paper, and began to read once more, drawn deeper into the life of the woman who had first chronicled the motel's secrets. The entries revealed more than mere memories. They spoke of a time when the motel had been a sanctuary for those who had nowhere else to turn. Among the faded ink and looping script, Mia discovered references to a mysterious benefactor, a figure who had quietly supported the motel's mission of refuge and compassion. The benefactor's name was never written outright, but the journal hinted at acts of kindness. Food left anonymously on doorsteps, bills quietly paid, and whispers of protection from forces that threatened to close the doors forever. Mia's fingers traced the words describing late-night meetings in the motel's dimly lit lobby, where residents and staff gathered to share their stories and offer each other strength. The journal spoke of secret codes and discreet signals used to identify those in need without drawing unwanted attention. It was a language of survival, born from necessity and forged in the quiet courage of those who had walked these halls before. Her eyes widened as she uncovered a hand-drawn map tucked between the pages, its edges frayed and ink faded. The map depicted the motel and its immediate surroundings, marking hidden passages and safe spots unknown to outsiders. Mia's heart quickened. This was more than a building. It was a carefully guarded haven with layers of protection woven into its very structure. Determined to explore further, Mia folded the journal gently and rose from the bed. The room felt charged now, alive with the echoes of past lives and whispered secrets. She moved to the closet and retrieved the small suitcase she had found the day before, opening it to reveal a collection of worn letters and faded photographs. Among them, a letter caught her eye, its envelope sealed with a wax imprint of a delicate emblem that matched the one sketched in the journal. Breaking the seal with trembling fingers, Mia unfolded the letter, revealing a message written in careful script. To the keeper of this place, may you find strength in these walls, as those before you have. The path is not easy, but it is yours to walk. Trust in the kindness hidden in shadows and the light that comes from unexpected places. Eleanor. Mia folded the letter back and stared at the emblem, a symbol she had seen before but never understood. It was a delicate intertwining of leaves and keys, an emblem of guardianship and hope. She realized that the motel had been more than a refuge. It was a legacy, passed down through generations who had dedicated themselves to protecting the vulnerable. Her thoughts drifted to the mysterious benefactor mentioned in the journal, perhaps Eleanor herself or someone close to her. The motel's history was entwined with acts of unseen kindness, quiet battles fought in the background to keep its doors open. Mia felt a surge of determination. If this place had been a haven for others, then it could be one for her too. That evening, as twilight settled over the city, Mia decided to explore the motel's lobby, the heart of the building that the journal had described as a gathering place. She stepped cautiously into the dim corridor, her footsteps muffled by the threadbare carpet. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the air smelled of dust and forgotten memories. The lobby was larger than she had imagined, with a faded reception desk cluttered with old papers and a cracked telephone. A broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals catching the fading light and scattering it like fragmented stars. Mia ran her fingers along the desk's edge, imagining the conversations and connections that had once filled this space. Her gaze caught a small wooden box tucked beneath the counter. Kneeling, she pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside lay an assortment of keys, some rusted, others surprisingly well preserved, each tagged with room numbers and small notes in faded ink. One key, marked with the emblem she had seen before, bore a tiny note. For those who seek more than shelter. Mia's heart pounded as she lifted the key, feeling its cold weight in her palm. The note hinted at something hidden, a secret meant only for those who understood the motel's deeper purpose. She slipped the key into her pocket, resolved to uncover what it unlocked. As she rose, a sudden sound startled her, a faint rustling from the hallway outside. Mia froze, listening intently. The sound grew clearer, footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty motel. She held her breath, heart racing, and then a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Daniel, the outreach worker she had met days before. His expression was cautious but warm as he stepped fully into the lobby's fading light. "I wanted to check in," he said softly. "See how you're doing, and if there's anything you need." Relief washed over Mia as she smiled faintly. "I've been reading," she replied, holding up the journal. "There's so much history here, more than I realized. This place was meant to be a refuge. Daniel nodded, stepping closer to examine the journal's worn cover. It still can be, he said. There are people who remember, who want to help. You're not alone in this. Together, they talked quietly amid the relics of the past, sharing hopes and plans. Daniel spoke of local programs aimed at supporting women like Mia, offering resources and community. Mia felt a cautious hope blossoming inside her, fueled by the stories she had uncovered and the kindness extended by a stranger. As the evening shadows deepened, Mia returned to her room clutching the journal and the mysterious key. The motel was no longer just a shelter from the cold. It was a place alive with secrets, history, and the promise of a better tomorrow. With each page turned and each discovery made, she felt herself becoming part of something larger, a legacy of courage, compassion, and quiet strength that had endured through the darkest nights. And somewhere within the motel's fading walls, the spirit of those who had come before whispered encouragement, urging her to keep moving forward, to uncover the hidden gifts left in the shadows, and to find her own place in the story yet to be written. The morning light filtered through the cracked windows of the motel lobby, casting a soft glow over the worn surfaces and faded wallpaper. Mia Johnson stood near the reception desk, the journal still clutched in her hands, her eyes tracing the faded photographs pinned to the walls. Faces smiled back at her. Families, couples, individuals, all who had found a moment of solace within these walls. It was a mosaic of lives touched and stories intertwined, each one a testament to the motel's purpose beyond mere shelter. As she moved through the space, Mia felt the weight of the past settle around her, like a gentle embrace. The journal's words had painted a vivid picture of the motel's history, not just as a place to sleep, but as a sanctuary built on compassion and community. The entries spoke of Eleanor, the compassionate owner who had nurtured this refuge with unwavering dedication, and whose disappearance years ago had left the motel adrift. Yet, despite her absence, the spirit she had cultivated lingered, woven into every creaking floorboard and faded curtain. Mia's footsteps echoed softly as she approached the small gathering area, where a few broken chairs circled a low table scarred by time. She imagined the late-night meetings described in the journal, the hushed conversations where hopes were shared and fears eased. The motel had been more than brick and mortar. It was a living, breathing haven where strangers became family. Her gaze settled on a bulletin board near the entrance, its surface cluttered with yellowed flyers and faded announcements. Among them, she spotted a flyer from a local community center offering support for homeless women and families, a lifeline that still pulsed faintly in the city outside. The juxtaposition of past and present stirred a resolve within her. The motel's legacy was not just history, it was a call to action. Determined to honor that legacy, Mia turned her attention to the neglected rooms along the hallway. She opened the door to room 12, the numbers peeling from the frame, and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight, filtering through the grimy window. The room was empty save for a rickety chair and a cracked mirror. Yet, Mia saw potential here, a chance to restore, to create, to transform. She moved from room to room, each one telling its own story of abandonment and forgotten dreams. But beneath the decay, Mia sensed the motel's heartbeat, a steady rhythm waiting to be reignited by care and compassion. The journal had revealed Eleanor's vision, and Mia knew that vision was now hers to carry forward. Returning to the lobby, Mia found Daniel waiting, leaning against the worn reception desk. His presence was a comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in this endeavor. He smiled warmly as she approached. "The motel still holds a lot of life," he said, nodding toward the hallway. It's more than just bricks and paint. It's a symbol. Mia nodded, her eyes bright with determination. I want to bring that symbol back to life. To make this a place where people can feel safe again. Daniel's expression softened. There are programs that can help. Funding for repairs, support services. But it will take time and effort. I'm ready for that, Mia replied. I want to be part of something bigger than myself. Together, they began to map out a plan, discussing ways to reach out to the community and rally support. Daniel spoke of local volunteers, donations, and partnerships that could breathe new energy into the motel's faded halls. Mia listened intently, absorbing each idea as fuel for her commitment. As the day wore on, Mia found herself drawn back to the journal, its pages a constant source of inspiration. She read once more about Eleanor's tireless work, organizing food drives, offering counseling, creating a network of care that extended beyond the motel's walls. Eleanor's vision had been rooted in empathy and action, a stone blueprint for resilience that Mia was determined to follow. In the quiet moments, Mia reflected on her own journey. The hardships that had brought her here, the uncertainty that still loomed. Yet, within the motel's embrace, she found a renewed sense of purpose. The struggles she faced were mirrored in the stories of those who had come before, their strength a beacon lighting her path forward. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights flickered to life, Mia stood by the window of her room, looking out at the streets bathed in twilight. The motel no longer felt like a refuge from the world. It was a starting point, a foundation upon which she could build a future. She thought of the journal, the letters, the photographs, fragments of a legacy she was now part of. The motel's past and present converged in a delicate balance, and Mia was ready to carry its story into the days ahead. With each breath, she embraced the challenge, knowing that through her efforts, the motel's spirit would live on, sheltering those who needed it most. And as night settled over the city, the motel stood quietly, its walls holding the promise of renewal, a beacon of hope waiting to shine again. The following evening, the motel's lobby was bathed in the soft glow of a flickering overhead light, its dimness matching the quiet anticipation that had settled over the space. Mia Johnson sat on one of the weathered chairs, her hands resting protectively on her belly as she waited. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old wood, mingling with a faint trace of something fresher. Hope, perhaps, or the promise of change. A gentle knock at the door drew her attention. Mia rose cautiously, smoothing the folds of her worn jacket before opening it to reveal a man with kind eyes and a tentative smile. Daniel stood there, carrying a small bundle wrapped in a faded cloth. His presence was a balm to the isolation Mia had felt since arriving at the motel, a reminder that she was not alone in this journey. "Hi, Mia," he said softly. "I thought you might appreciate this." He handed her the bundle, and she unfolded it to reveal a neatly folded blanket and a small box of supplies. Essentials for someone preparing to welcome a new life into the world. The gesture warmed her heart in a way words could not. "Thank you," Mia replied, her voice thick with gratitude. "It means more than you know." Daniel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I've been looking for this place for weeks," he admitted. "It's been hard finding anyone here, but when I heard you'd taken shelter, I wanted to reach out." Mia gestured to the worn furniture and faded walls. "It's not much, but it's shelter. And now it feels like the beginning of something new." They sat together, the quiet between them filled with unspoken understanding. Daniel spoke of his work with the outreach program, the challenges faced by homeless, women and families, and the small victories that kept hope alive. He shared stories of mothers who had found stability, children who had been saved from the streets, and communities that had rallied to support those in need. Mia listened intently, drawing strength from his words. The motel, once a forgotten relic, was becoming a symbol of possibility. A place where lives could be rebuilt, where struggles were met with compassion and action. As the evening deepened, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small notebook. "I've been keeping notes on resources and contacts," he explained. "There's a midwife in town who works with women in situations like yours. She's discreet and experienced." Mia's heart quickened. The thought of having someone knowledgeable nearby was both comforting and daunting. The pregnancy had advanced quickly, and the uncertainty of when labor might begin loomed over her like a shadow. "Would you be willing to meet her?" Daniel asked gently. After a moment's hesitation, Mia nodded. "Yes, I think I'd like that." Their conversation shifted to practical matters: how to prepare for the birth, what signs to watch for, and ways to stay safe and healthy in the days ahead. Daniel's calm presence grounded Mia, offering a semblance of stability amid the chaos of her life. As night fell, a soft rain began to tap against the windows, the rhythmic sound a soothing backdrop to their plans. Mia felt a flicker of hope growing within her, fragile but persistent, like the first shoots of spring pushing through frozen earth. Just as Daniel was about to leave, a sudden sharp pain seized Mia's abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of the table to steady herself. Daniel's eyes widened in concern as he moved quickly to her side. "Are you all right?" he asked urgently. Mia shook her head, her breath coming in shallow bursts. I think it's starting." Panic surged, but Daniel's steady voice cut through the fear. "Stay calm. We'll get through this." He reached for his phone, but it was dead, the battery long surrendered to neglect. The old motel's walls seemed to close in around them, the isolation pressing hard. Yet Daniel remained composed. "Help is coming," he said firmly. "I know someone who can assist." Minutes stretched into an eternity as Mia fought through the pain, her body trembling but her spirit resolute. Daniel stayed close, offering words of encouragement, recounting the advice the midwife had shared during their earlier conversation. Then, just as the storm outside intensified, a knock echoed through the motel's hallway. Daniel opened the door to reveal a woman in her 50s, dressed in a worn jacket and carrying a small bag. Her eyes were sharp yet kind, radiating a quiet confidence that immediately put Mia at ease. "I'm Margaret," she said softly. "I was told you might need help." Mia managed a weak smile, relief flooding through her. Margaret's presence was a lifeline, a connection to the generations of women who had come before her in this very place. Together, they moved to the bed where Mia lay, the room filled with a calm urgency. Margaret's hands were steady as she guided Mia through the early stages of labor, her voice a soothing anchor amid the storm's fury. She spoke gently of the motel's history, of the women it had sheltered, and the strength passed down through the years. As the night deepened, the storm outside raged, but within the walls of the motel, a new life was beginning. Mia clung to the support around her, the legacy of refuge and resilience unfolding in the soft cries of her newborn. In that moment, the motel ceased to be just a building. It became a sanctuary reborn, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and hope. The morning after the storm had passed, the motel's worn exterior was bathed in a pale, gray light that filtered through heavy clouds. Inside room 7, Mia Johnson rested quietly, the soft coos of her newborn daughter filling the air like a gentle melody. The labor had been arduous, but with Margaret's steady care and Daniel's unwavering support, she had brought new life into the world within these fragile walls. The motel, once a crumbling refuge, now held a fresh hope threaded through its very foundations. Yet, as sunlight crept through the grimy window, a new challenge loomed. Word had begun to spread about the abandoned motel and its unexpected occupant. Rumors whispered through the city streets of development plans, of demolition orders, and of a property ripe for redevelopment. The fragile sanctuary Mia had found was under threat, its future precarious and uncertain. Mia sat by the window, her newborn cradled in her arms, eyes fixed on the distant skyline where cranes and scaffolding marked the city's relentless march forward. The contrast between the towering glass buildings and the motel's peeling paint was stark, a reminder of the forces arrayed against her fragile haven. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Daniel stepped inside, his face etched with concern but determined. "The city council has approved plans to demolish the motel," he said quietly. "They want to turn this block into commercial space. It's happening soon." Mia's heart tightened, the weight of the news settling like a stone in her chest. "But this place, it's more than just a building. It's a home. For me, for my daughter." Daniel nodded, sympathy softening his eyes. "I know. And there are others who feel the same. People who remember the motel's history, its role as a refuge. But the city is focused on progress and profit." The reality was harsh and immediate. The motel's fate seemed sealed, its walls destined to be torn down to make way for new development, erasing the stories etched into its very fabric. But Mia's resolve did not waver. If this place was to survive, she would fight for it. Together, they began to gather support. Daniel reached out to local activists, community leaders, and historical preservationists, sharing the motel's story and its importance as a sanctuary for vulnerable women and families. Flyers were printed, meetings were organized, and petitions circulated. The motel's legacy, once whispered in forgotten journals and faded photographs, was now spoken aloud in the city's public spaces. Mia found strength in the growing chorus of voices. Neighbors who had once passed by without notice now stopped to offer words of encouragement. Former residents came forward, sharing their own stories of refuge and renewal within the motel's walls. The community began to rally, united by a shared desire to protect this fragile sanctuary. Yet, the fight was not without its tensions. Developers pushed back, emphasizing the economic benefits of new construction and dismissing the motel as an obsolete relic. City officials weighed the competing interests, caught between growth and preservation. The motel's future hung in the balance. Amid the turmoil, Mia continued to care for her daughter, the small life in her arms, a beacon of hope and determination. Each day brought new challenges, meetings, phone calls, and the constant pressure of uncertainty, but also moments of quiet joy and resilience. One afternoon, as Mia prepared a simple meal in the cramped kitchenette, a knock came at the door. She opened it to find Mr. Harrington, the family lawyer who had once handled her grandmother's estate. His presence was unexpected, but welcome. "I've heard about the situation," he said gravely. "The motel means more than most realize. There are legal protections that could help. Historic preservation laws, deeds tied to the property. We may have grounds to challenge the demolition." Mia's eyes lit with cautious hope. Could that really work? "It's not guaranteed," Harrington admitted. "But it's a start. We'll need to gather all the documents, trace the property's history, and build a case. Your grandmother's legacy may hold the key." With renewed purpose, Mia and Harrington delved into archives and legal records, uncovering deeds, family wills, and municipal documents that spoke to the motel's significance beyond its worn facade. Each discovery was a thread woven into a tapestry of protection, a shield against the forces threatening to erase the past. Meanwhile, the community's efforts gained momentum. Local newspapers ran stories highlighting the motel's history and the plight of its newest resident. Social media campaigns spread awareness, drawing support from across the city and beyond. Fundraisers were organized to support legal fees and repairs, transforming the motel from a forgotten relic into a symbol of resilience. Yet, opposition remained fierce. Developers intensified their push, and the city council scheduled a hearing to decide the Yoi motel's fate. The tension was palpable, the motel's future resting on a knife's edge. On the day of the hearing, Mia stood before the council chamber, her daughter asleep in a stroller beside her. She spoke with quiet conviction, sharing her story and the motel's legacy as a refuge for those society often overlooked. Her voice carried the weight of generations, the strength of a woman determined to protect the place that had given her hope. Her testimony was joined by others, former residents, activists, and community leaders, each weaving a narrative of compassion, history, and the human cost of progress. The council listened, the room charged with emotion and urgency. When the session ended, the decision was deferred, granting a temporary reprieve. The motel would not be demolished immediately, but the fight was far from over. Mia knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. But the community spirit had been awakened. That night, as she lay beside her sleeping daughter, Mia allowed herself a moment of peace. The motel still stood, its walls sheltering not just a family, but a legacy of hope and resilience. The battle was just beginning, but for now, the flame of refuge burned bright. The night had settled deep over the city, draping the streets in shadows and stillness. Inside the worn walls of the motel, a storm brewed, not in the skies, but within Mia Johnson's body. The quiet refuge she'd carved out felt suddenly fragile as a sharp pain gripped her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of the bed, her breath shallow and hurried. Labor had begun. Alone in the dimly lit room, the weight of the moment pressed down on her. The distant rumble of thunder outside echoed the tumult inside, the storm's fury mirroring her own struggle. The small space felt confining yet strangely alive. Every creak and groan of the old building a reminder of the history it held, the countless souls who had passed through, many in moments like this. Mia's hands trembled as she reached for the journal resting nearby, its pages a silent testament to resilience and strength. She flipped to a passage she had read before, words penned by a woman who had weathered hardship and found hope within these same walls. The connection gave her a fleeting comfort, a reminder that she was not truly alone. Her breath hitched as another contraction seized her, more intense than the last. The pain radiated through her, but she steadied herself, recalling the advice Margaret, the midwife, had shared. "Trust your body," Margaret had said softly. "Breathe through it. Help will come." But tonight, help was not yet at hand. Her phone lay dead on the bedside table, a casualty of long-forgotten charges. The silence of the motel was thick, broken only by the distant patter of rain against the window pane and the occasional creak of settling wood. Fear crept in, sharp and unwelcome, but Mia pushed it aside, focusing on steadying her breath, grounding herself amid the storm. Minutes blurred as the pain ebbed and flowed, each wave a challenge met with quiet determination. She gripped the edge of the mattress, knuckles white, and whispered encouragements to the life growing within her. The motel, once a forsaken sanctuary, now held the weight of new beginnings. Outside, the storm intensified, winds howling through broken windows and rattling the fragile panes. The heavy rain beat a relentless rhythm against the roof, as if nature itself mourned the trials unfolding within. Yet, within the room, amid the shadows and flickering candlelight, Mia found a fierce resolve. Summoning her strength, she moved carefully to the small window and opened it slightly, letting in the cool night air. The fresh breeze eased the suffocating heat that had built up inside, mingling with the scent of rain and old wood. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, anchoring herself to the present. Another sharp contraction gripped her, and Mia cried out softly, the sound swallowed by the storm. She reached for the small silver bell resting on the bedside table, a curious object left behind by a previous occupant, its surface worn smooth by time. An impulse urged her to ring it, a hope that the stories she'd read about the motel's hidden kindnesses might still hold true. With trembling fingers, she lifted the bell and gave it a tentative shake. The clear, ringing tone cut through the room's stillness, echoing down the empty halls like a call for aid. Mia's heart raced as she waited, hope mingling with fear. Moments stretched, the silence heavy and unbroken, until a soft knock sounded at the door. Relief flooded through her as the door creaked open, revealing the familiar figure of Margaret, the midwife, her eyes sharp with concern and kindness. "I heard the bell," Margaret said gently, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "You're not alone." Mia's breath hitched, tears of exhaustion and gratitude streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know if help would come." Margaret moved swiftly but calmly, setting down her bag and preparing the room with practiced ease. She spoke softly, guiding Mia through the labor with steady hands and reassuring words. The storm outside raged on, but within the motel's fragile walls, a quiet strength took root. As the hours passed, the pain shifted from agony to purpose. Mia's cries filled the room, mingling with Margaret's soothing voice and the gentle patter of rain. The motel, a witness to countless stories of hardship and hope, bore silent testament to this new chapter unfolding within. Finally, as dawn's first light seeped through the window, a soft, piercing cry broke the night's stillness. Mia collapsed back onto the bed, her body spent but her spirit soaring. In her arms lay a tiny, fragile bundle. Her daughter, born into the world amid storm and silence, yet surrounded by a legacy of resilience. Margaret smiled warmly, wrapping the newborn in a clean blanket and placing her gently against Mia's chest. "She's strong," Margaret said softly. "Just like you." Mia held her daughter close, feeling the steady heartbeat against her own. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world washed clean and new. Within the motel's worn walls, a sanctuary had been reborn, a place of beginnings, of survival, and of hope. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the room, Mia closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of peace. The journey ahead would be difficult, but she was no longer alone. The motel's hidden kindnesses, the legacy of those who had come before, and the unwavering support of those around her had carried her through the darkest night. And with her newborn daughter nestled against her heart, Mia knew this was only the beginning. The soft morning light filtered through the grimy window panes of room 7, casting gentle shadows across the worn floorboards and faded wallpaper. Mia Johnson cradled her newborn daughter close, the delicate warmth of the tiny body against her chest a balm to the exhaustion etched into her features. The storm of the night before had passed, but its echoes lingered, both in the pounding rain, still dripping from the eaves, and in the tumultuous journey that had brought them here. A quiet knock at the door startled Mia from her reverie. She looked up to see Daniel standing just beyond the threshold, his eyes filled with concern and something tenderly hopeful. In his hands, he carried a small basket lined with a soft blanket, filled with essentials, a few diapers, a bundle of clean clothes, and a carefully wrapped loaf of bread. "I thought you might need this," Daniel said softly, stepping inside and closing the door gently behind him. "We've been rallying support. People want to help." Mia managed a tired smile, her fingers tightening protectively around her daughter. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more than I can say." Daniel set the basket down carefully and took a seat nearby, his gaze flickering toward the sleeping infant. "You're not alone in this," he said quietly. "There's a whole community ready to stand with you and the motel." Mia's heart swelled with a fragile hope. The days ahead promised challenges, but she was buoyed by the knowledge that others cared, that the motel's legacy of refuge was not forgotten. Later that morning, the city council convened for a hearing that would determine the motel's fate. The chamber was filled with faces, some stern, others sympathetic, each representing the competing forces of progress and preservation. Mia sat among a small group of supporters, her daughter nestled safely in a stroller beside her. When her turn came, Mia rose with quiet determination. Her voice was steady as she spoke of the motel's history, its role as a sanctuary for women like herself, and the new life that had begun within its walls. She shared the stories she had uncovered, the journal, the letters, the kindness woven into the fabric of the building. Her words carried the weight of generations, a testament to resilience and hope. One by one, others stepped forward. Former residents who spoke of second chances, community leaders who emphasized the social importance of preserving such spaces, and activists who warned against erasing history in the name of development. Their testimonies painted a vivid picture of the motel as more than mere property. It was a living symbol of compassion and survival. The developers presented their case as well, emphasizing economic growth, job creation, and the city's need to modernize. Their arguments were polished, their vision for the future clear. Yet beneath their promises lay a disregard for the human stories intertwined with the motel's worn walls. As the hearing drew to a close, the council members deliberated in hushed tones. The tension in the room was palpable, a fragile balance between progress and preservation hanging in the air. Finally, the chairperson spoke. The demolition would be deferred for now. The council recognized the motel's historic significance and the urgent need to explore alternatives. A committee would be formed to investigate preservation options and community involvement. Relief washed over Mia and her supporters, a cautious victory amid an ongoing struggle. The motel would stand a little longer, its walls sheltering not just a mother and child, but a legacy fiercely defended. Outside the chamber, the city buzzed with renewed energy. News of the decision spread quickly, sparking rallies and fundraisers. Volunteers arrived to clean and repair, their hands restoring life to the faded halls. The motel's faded sign, once a symbol of neglect, now glowed faintly with the promise of renewal. Mia found herself at the center of this awakening, her story resonating with many who saw in her the embodiment of hope and resilience. She began to organize support groups, connecting women who had faced hardships similar to hers, fostering a community built on empathy and strength. Daniel remained a steadfast ally, coordinating resources and advocating for the motel's preservation. Together, they navigated bureaucratic hurdles and legal challenges. Each small victory a step toward securing a future for the sanctuary. At night, as Mia cradled her daughter beneath the soft glow of a single lamp, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the cold city streets to the shelter of the motel, through labor and fear, to this fragile moment of hope. The motel was no longer just a building. It had become a beacon, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of those who refuse to be forgotten, and the possibility of new beginnings. And as dawn broke over the city, Mia knew the fight was far from over. But with her daughter's steady breath against her heart and a community rallying behind her, she faced the future with unwavering courage, ready to write the next chapter in the motel's enduring story. The soft murmur of voices filled the modest community hall nestled on the outskirts of the city, its worn wooden floors creaking gently beneath the steady footsteps of those gathered. Mia Johnson stood at the front, her newborn daughter nestled safely in a sling against her chest, as she addressed a room filled with familiar faces. Women who had found refuge within the walls of the old motel, neighbors who had rallied for its preservation, and volunteers who had dedicated themselves to its revival. Clutched in her hands was a leather-bound journal, its pages worn and filled with the stories of those who had come before her. She traced the embossed emblem on its cover, a delicate intertwining of leaves and keys, and felt the weight of legacy resting upon her shoulders. This journal was more than a record. It was a testament to resilience, a bridge connecting past and future. Mia's voice was steady as she spoke, recounting the motel's history, not just as a building of peeling paint and faded signs, but as a sanctuary forged through acts of quiet courage and compassion. She shared the story of Eleanor, the woman who had dedicated her life to sheltering the vulnerable, and of the mysterious benefactor whose kindness had kept the motel's doors open when hope seemed distant. The audience listened intently, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of struggle and survival. Many had walked similar paths, their own stories woven into the fabric of the motel's legacy. Mia spoke of the battles fought to protect the motel from demolition, the community's unwavering support, and the promise of renewal that now glimmered on the horizon. As she closed the journal, Mia looked around the room, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. "This is our story," she said softly. "A story of resilience, of hope, and of the strength we find when we come together. The motel is not just a building. It is a living testament to all of us." After the meeting, Mia lingered, speaking quietly with those who approached. She met women who had found shelter here in their darkest hours, young mothers seeking support, and elders who had witnessed the motel's evolution through decades. Each conversation deepened her resolve to nurture this legacy. In the weeks that followed, the motel transformed. Volunteers repaired broken windows, painted faded walls, and cleaned neglected rooms. The once dilapidated lobby buzzed with renewed energy, becoming a gathering place once more. Community workshops offered resources and education for women and families in need, while support groups fostered connection and healing. Mia worked tirelessly, balancing motherhood with advocacy, her days filled with meetings, planning, and moments of quiet reflection. She began to document the motel's ongoing story in a new journal, her own chronicle of challenges and triumphs, of lives touched and futures shaped. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the freshly cleaned windows, Mia found herself alone in the lobby. She opened the journal resting on the small table and began to write. Today, the motel breathes anew. Its walls echo with laughter, its rooms filled with hope. We are the keepers now, the guardians of a legacy that refuses to fade. Her pen paused as she looked around, The worn furniture, the vibrant faces of those who had returned, the symbol of resilience manifest in every corner. The motel was more than shelter. It was a beacon, a home. Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent yet intertwined with the stories unfolding within this small sanctuary. Mia knew the road ahead would be long, the battles ongoing, but she no longer walked it alone. As evening descended, she stepped outside, the cool air wrapping around her like a promise. Cradling her daughter, she gazed at the motel's weathered sign, now shining softly under the street lamp's glow, a symbol of endurance and new beginnings. In that moment, Mia understood that the motel was not just a place on a map, but a living testament to the strength of those who dared to hope. And as she looked toward the future, she embraced her role as the 13th keeper of this legacy, ready to write the next chapter with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith.